Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sandra, I think you're leading us off today.
I am. I'm gonna torture everyone then because on my agenda it says you, but that's okay. I'm happy to do the welcoming. It's always so great to see so many beautiful, wonderful faces ready to get to the business of learning and supporting our community in what we learn. So thank you. It's gorgeous out there. So I am so touched, honor, and proud that here we are all together with this intention of learning. So next slide for the agenda, please. And as always, we believe in sharing with you what we're going to discuss every day. So the welcome, which I just did, then we will have our land acknowledgement like we do every time. We go over quickly our Zoom and etiquette. We will talk about our calendar. It's important to keep this alive in your mind because we know that you have a life outside of here and a lot of things that you do. We will have a really fun and yet very informative icebreaker with myths and facts. We're going to visit the Padlet, and this week I got an opportunity to go over most of them, and I'm impressed. I'm really, really impressed with what you've all shared. We will have an opportunity with Noemi and Shakira to go over the different points. If there are any questions or anything that we want to share about the module 3, then we will have once again a very important part of our work together every day. So please do your best to participate in the breakout rooms. And we have a special guest, Erin Von Femp, mental health professional that will be sharing some about the work that they do. And if we have time, if not, we will just save this for when we talk more in deep about the self-care ideas. And as always, questions and answers and sharing with you what we have coming up. So next slide, please. And as always, our land acknowledgement, and I will pass it on to Clarissa.
Thank you, Sandra. We want to acknowledge that we are sitting in the territory and the waters of the Salish Coast peoples. As invited guests, we are operating in the lands bordering the waters shared by all the tribes belonging to the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We also recognize that many enslaved and contracted peoples were forced to dedicate their work to the construction of what is now Seattle and the surrounding area. For these peoples and their descendants, we recognize their undelible mark in the space in which we will gather for this event. Finally, in recognizing that this land is colonized indigenous territory that has been designed through slaves and hired labor, it is our collective responsibility to critically interrogate the stories and later lives of their events and to honor, protect, and sustain this land. And now I'll pass it on to Anna.
Thank you, Clarissa.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's a wonderful day. And just wanted to just review real quick, to remember to be nice to everyone, to respect each other, keeping yourself on mute when you're not speaking, being aware of airtime, so that way most people can have an opportunity to share. And offer grace to others. And if you're comfortable, you can turn on your camera so we can see you. Next slide, please. And remember that function in Zoom that you can use to raise your virtual hand whenever you're ready. And you can do that either by and then doing that, and then when you're called upon, unmute yourself. And you can also welcome to participate in the chat as well. Next slide, please. And the last thing, I haven't seen any this time, but if anyone rejoins and your name doesn't appear, but like iPhone or something similar that is not connected to someone's name, please change it for the meeting, so that way we can see you and we can call you the right name. And also mark participation, because we take attendance in every session as part of our program. Let us know if you have any issues or problems, or if you have any questions in the chat. Next slide, please. And let's celebrate. So we have a bunch of you finish lesson 2. Yay! So I wanted to give you a congrats and good work for doing that. And next slide, please. And then we have quite a few who also finished lesson 3. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for all your great work. And I will now pass it over to Edith.
Hello, everyone. Just going over the calendar real quick. So we are on our 3rd session today. And so we have 2 left, which is going to be session 4 and 5 on April 28th and Sunday, May 5th. Same time, 2 to 3:30. So yeah, we are technically at the halfway point. So yeah, round of applause. And yeah, I'll pass it on to
Yay!
Thank you. And with that, we're going to move into a really fun exercise that Shakira will guide us through. The
We go to the
myths
next.
and facts. So
Yeah, next slide. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to cover some myths and facts. I'll read out the statement and I'll ask for you all to put in the chat whether you think it is a myth or a fact, and then we'll discuss. So the first one is, children do not experience mental health problems. Do you think that is a myth or a fact? I see lots of myths. Yes, you are all correct. Children can, in fact, experience mental health challenges, and they manifest differently than they show up in adults, right? Not all kids are verbal or using their words a lot. So we might see their mental health challenges in how they play, in how they're learning at school, sometimes in the words that they use, in how they handle their emotions. And in fact, there are specific diagnoses for children that are different than the ones for adults. There's some that are the same, some that are different. And many therapists specialize in child mental health. So you might work with a therapist or meet someone who is a child mental health specialist. So kids do in fact experience mental health challenges, and it's known and recognized enough that there are specialty focused for treating children and families and special diagnosis for children based on where they are in their development. The next statement is that I can help a person who has a mental health problem. Myth or fact? Put it in the chat. Oh, I see some facts, some it depends. Fact. It depends, question mark. Good thinking. I like the yeah, mostly depends. Yes, and depends. Okay, I like the nuanced thinking here. Generally, there are many things that you can do and that I can do and that we can all do to support or help someone with a mental health problem. And generally, we can listen, we can offer validation or comfort, we can connect people with resources, and we can let them know that they're not alone and that there's hope for change. And like you all said, it depends. There are limits to what we all can do based on our role, but there are some sort of core fundamental things that we can all do to help or support a person with a mental health challenge. Next one is, people with mental health issues are violent and unpredictable. Myth or fact? Put it in the chat. Myth. Oh, that warms my heart to see you all put that that is a myth. Most people, yes, it is a myth. Most people with mental health conditions are not more likely to be violent than anyone else. And only 3 to 5% of violent acts are committed or can be attributed to someone with a serious mental health illness. And the reality that we know is that people with mental health illnesses and challenges are actually more likely, over 10 times more likely, to be victims of violent crimes than the general population. So people are more vulnerable sometimes because of their mental health challenges. Next one reads, if someone has a mental health problem, it's because they're unintelligent. Myth or fact? Put it in the chat. Yeah, good work, y'all. That is also a myth, right? Mental illness, like physical illness, can affect anybody regardless of their level of intelligence, regardless of their social class, their wealth, their poverty, their income level, their ethnicity or culture. It has nothing to do with your level of intelligence. It can really impact anyone. Next one, that's a super myth. I love that. Next one, mental health problem is a sign of weakness. And if a person were stronger, they wouldn't have that problem. Myth or fact? Myth. Yes, you are all correct. And I imagine this is a hard one. Many of us probably were taught that mental illness or mental health challenges are a weakness and that people need to be strong, work harder, focus on other things to get better. But we know that it isn't related to being weak or having no willpower. In fact, people who are living with mental health challenges, it takes such a great deal of courage and strength to get through every day to day. And then the next one reads, teens who have good grades and have lots of friends don't have mental health problems because they have no reason to be depressed. Myth or fact? Put it in the chat. Myth. You all came quick with that one. Ha, myth. I saw that, Greg. Yes, it turns out that experiencing mental health challenges or depression, for example, has a root in a complex interplay of lots of different factors, social, psychological, biological, and it can affect anybody, like we talked about before. And young people who are doing well in school might still feel anxiety or depression. Even if people have lots of friends in their life, teens or adults, they might still struggle with other mental health challenges. And we learned about a variety of different diagnoses that can manifest in youth and adults. We'll go to the next slide. All right, next statement reads, poor parenting is the cause of mental health problems in teens. Myth or fact? Myth. Good job. It depends. It can be. Yeah, good thinking, y'all. It is generally a myth because it is not the cause, right? Poor parenting does not necessarily cause mental health problems in teens, but there can be a relationship, of course, to what teens experience in their parenting. It can create a risk factor or a protective factor in how they're brought up, but there is no cause and effect. Mental health challenges, again, are impacted by many factors, including genetics, social conditions, the ACEs we talked about, those adverse childhood experiences. And these things can influence the well-being of an adolescent and their relationship with their caregivers or adults, but it's not the cause of mental health problems. And in the interest of time, I'll do one more, which is the next one. It reads, people whose mental health is compromised are not in a position to make decisions about their life. I'm curious, what do y'all think, myth or fact? Myth-ish. It depends. Myth, 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 and it depends. Yeah, good thinking. Yeah, generally, I appreciate that we're all leaning towards myth, and that's a really good way to lean because all people, including people who struggle with mental health challenges, have the right to be heard and to make decisions about their health and their life. And many people who experience mental health challenges are still able to understand the pros and cons or the risks and benefits of many decisions in their life. So this can come up, for example, in medical care. If someone needs to have surgery, can they understand the risks and benefits associated with a medical procedure? Living with depression or anxiety likely does not get in the way of your ability to make those decisions for yourself and your health. However, in some exceptional cases and often temporary situations, some people might experience mental health challenges like schizophrenia or psychosis or bipolar mania that could impact their decision making. But I would still lean towards it is likely a myth, and even people who experience paranoia, psychosis, mania, many of them can and still do have the ability to make decisions about their life and their health. We'll go to the next slide and pass it to you, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Shakira. That's one of my favorite exercises, the myth and truth, because we sometimes don't even know that we have some beliefs because they're not really ours. They were part of the stigma society has put on us as part of the narrative that goes on. And that was part of what we had talked about before and continue to talk about the reduction or elimination of stigma. And when I look at the Padlet, there was some really powerful sharing that some of it had to do with, as we know, the culture in which we have been brought up. And some cultures are still learning more about mental health and attempting to reduce the stigmas. Part of the Black and Latino community myself, I know that to be true. And one thing that I found interesting as I was reading, and I hope you all had an opportunity to read a few of these very, very powerful stories, is that sometimes we come into this work with the hope to help someone directly next to us, our spouses, our children, but sometimes this goes beyond that. And one of the stories that was shared was how someone's partner lost a family member to suicide, and they were not able to get help because of the stigma. So not only did it impact the family dynamics and that family that lost a family member, but also on the extended family, and how now that became part of an issue between this person to share and their partner, and caused them to end their marriage. So it's amazing how it's not just for us and for the people right next to us, but sometimes things is beyond our immediate, and how that can complicate situations and other family members. So always be on the lookout of the impact that any decision that has to do with mental health could impact family members. It's almost like it goes reverberating out, it happens here and then it moves out. So sometimes we're not always aware who else is impacted. So thank you everyone for your warm and meaningful conversations you were having. And I invite you, if you have any questions between the sharings, to feel free to reach out to whoever you read something that piqued your interest or that you want to know more about. So with that, I'm gonna pass it on to our Jody to start talking to us about our next activity, our breakout rooms. Thank you.
Great. So we are going to do as we usually do. This week, we all have the same scenario. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms in just a moment, but we'll go through the scenario together before we do that. And for our facilitators, they'll be just taking some notes from what your group wants to add to this discussion. Then we'll come back together, report out, and Shakira will help us to fill in any gaps or answer any questions that you have. So our scenario this week, and I just wanted to mention that our scenarios do come from sometimes some of the stories that are shared with us through this training, through our own lived experience or through situations that we know. So they're grounded in, based on a true story, if you will. Okay, so the scenario this week is that you've known your coworker, Bilal, for 2 years. He's the guy in the office who wears a smile with him to work and always has something positive to say, even in the most challenging of times. However, over the last 3 months, you've noticed that Bilal has grown quiet at work. He keeps more to himself, and he's missed several days of work. over the last few weeks. You can't remember the last time you saw him smile or drop into the staff break room to grab a coffee or eat lunch. And when you've seen him in the hall and asked him how he's doing, he says, fine. And he doesn't provide any additional details. You've noticed that he's lost some weight and he seems distracted in your team meetings. As a friend and coworker, you think he might be dealing with something, but you don't want to push him or jump to conclusions. So, on your way out of the building after work one day, you notice that he's sitting in his office with his head in his hands. You want to help. What do you do? So now we'll break up into our breakout rooms. And in just a second, you're going to see that if you go down to the bottom of your screen and you click on your breakout room, everyone should have already been assigned. So I'm going to open up all the rooms and you all can start jumping in to your breakout room right now. We'll have about 7 to 10 minutes and then we'll bring everybody back together. Facilitators, I'll give you a 1-minute warning. Oh, Natalie, think I'll get you signed.
Thank you.
Go. Let me push the stop button on record for just a minute. Let's see. Welcome back, everyone. It looks like we're all back together. We're going to use this time just to debrief, and maybe what we can do is just go ahead and start and see. Anna, did you want to go first and talk about what your group discussed in terms of this situation with Bilal?
Yes, of course. I mean, they have some excellent ideas, and so talked about um, mentioned as part of, since it was mentioned in the case scenario, on the being on the way out from the office and seeing him, mention that you're concerned and you have noticed a change in him, and then that change of behavior, and effort to set up a one-on-one's time to discuss if he wants to talk and about what he's going through. Also opening up with your own story and try not to push him. So something like making yourself real, showing that you're not perfect, relatable, making yourself vulnerable. So to hopefully trigger a conversation start. Also mentioning that, hey, I'm missing your smile lately, right? So it's a part of recognition in a positive way. In the workspace, it's easy to notice a change. And then maybe helping them with his workload a little bit. Easy's workload might help connect. And then there were strong comments, and that I thought were really good to consider, that about talking to others about concerns, it might be turning to gossip, and definitely that would not be good in the work situation. But if it's affecting the work of other people, then maybe making a recommendation just to a supervisor as a concern, and keeping it factual, avoiding gossip altogether. And yeah, I think that was all. Thank you so much, group. You were awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like a rich conversation. Some really great ideas and trying to connect on a human level and empathetic responses too, in terms of helping even in the workplace. That's great. Clarissa, what did you all talk about?
Yeah, so similarly, I think we definitely did talk about the importance of ensuring them that um, speaking with you, they could have a safe space where they could open up about anything that might be occurring in their life. Also, my group really talked about the importance of maintaining confidentiality, right? So again, maintaining that trust and really avoiding sharing information with other coworkers, even if that means resources within the workplace that might be offered. It's really important to let the individual decide if they want to reach out to these resources. But the key here is like ensuring, letting them know that these resources exist, but really leaving it up to them to make those decisions, I think is really important. You don't want to break that trust that they have with you. Also, we talked about the importance of connecting with nature. Several people in my group, Danielle, shared that there's a park across the street from her workplace, and that is a great place where she has been able to talk with people. And that is a really great way, again, maybe removing yourself from a difficult situation and connecting with nature and just kind of like, you know, yeah, just finding a place where you feel comfortable to speak about difficult things is really important. Yeah, I think that was really the key things about that we shared. And but yeah, overall, just a really great discussion. I was really happy that everyone kind of shared different things from their own perspectives.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And just creating that space for this person and not forcing, I think those are some key points there, not forcing it on anybody and just creating space and opportunity even outside of the workplace, which might be a better space in terms of somebody opening up. So great points. Edith.
Yeah, we had similar ideas, approaches come up in our conversation as well. Definitely to, if you notice the signs, mention that that you've been noticing that they've been that you notice some changes, right? To offer that support and to let them know that they're not alone, and just be patient, understanding with them in case that if they don't want to speak in that moment, right? Or talk about the situation, that that you'll be there for them if they ever want to talk, maybe at a later time once they're more comfortable. Definitely use other approaches as well, maybe invite them for coffee to have a chat, or going for a walk as well. Just making sure you see how comfortable the person is in the moment, and just being able to kind of gauge off that, and even maybe having some resources in mind in case the situation, if they do decide to open up and talk to you, maybe have some resources that you can give them. And so, yeah, I think in regards to maybe talking about it with other coworkers, there was maybe to not do it, right, can be seen as disrespectful, kind of gossipy. But maybe if like you weren't taking this course, right? If there was a coworker who didn't know about this course, then maybe it could be okay, since you may be confused on what to do in this situation, or may need help from them. Um, but we did have some questions on the last question. um, uh, it was like, what if it starts to affect the quality of the work you produce? So I think we kind of were thrown off maybe by how the the question was worded. But yeah, I think one idea was like maybe they would need to take some time off work, or maybe seeing um, how to talk about it, your approach. So yeah, and I think we kind of wanted some more feedback on that.
Mhm.
Maybe hearing from other leaders, facilitators, and Shakira.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. And we can make note of all these questions. We can put some in the chat as well. And as soon as our groups are done reporting, we can go back to these questions and just also check in with Shakira on what Shakira advises as well. Let's see, Louisa, I think you're up next.
Oh, thank you. Well, we have some points just kind of like the other ones that we have been listening, which is makes me very happy because we all kind of know what we how can we help. One of the things that we also highlight is exactly that try to be selective with who are we going to probably include in the in the in the support team that we will be. Not all co-workers, whatever, because of the same situation. Sometimes it might turn into a gossip, and that would be adding more weight to this person's shoulders. We have some people that they share in our group that they are particularly and coincidentally in that situation right now, that they have a coworker or someone going through something similar. And I mean, I think we all somehow along our lives are in a situation like this when we know someone that we might think that they need some support or help, even including ourselves, right? So it's always helpful to know what to do. And I'm very happy that we all agree that we will make ourselves present. That's what they mentioned, with our respecting the distance and the time that they would like to open up or not. Do not make a pressure on trying to be, invasive in their lives. And also, we mentioned, and I think that's a very good idea, is to try to have a side door, so include them in, okay, I'm going to have a coffee. Do you want to go with me? Or I'm going to do this or that. So that way they will feel not just all the time about the situation that it's concerned us, because that might be overwhelming, but just make them feel that they are not alone, that we are here, and probably gain some trust. So in that way, they will probably open up and feel comfortable with us, that it's a safe place and they can get help, that we can guide them and get some help. So that was basically what we were talking, and I think that was very interesting and rich and positive. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sounds great. And like that word about, trust. People don't trust us. They don't know us. It's hard to, really open up and divulge that. So going to coffee, or as one group said, a park, or that's just giving another opportunity to get to know us a little bit more.
Mhm.
That sounds great. Sandra, what would you add to this that your group discussed?
I think that a lot of what we discussed was discussed. I would probably add to make sure to find a safe space for that person to avoid what we talked about, gossiping. The end of the day is probably a better choice than in the middle of the workday. We want to consider the impact, to also not expect that they will respond immediately. Sometimes it's a matter of just planting the seed and making ourselves available, and making sure more than anything that without any pressure, that they know that we see them and that we care.
Nice. Thank you so much. And Shakira, we're going to end with you, and then we can also go back to the questions that others posed. And if 1 second, I just wanted to admit our special guest as well and just let her know what we're doing. Erin, we want to welcome you to our Pyramidal Health Navigator live training. We appreciate that you're here. We are just finishing up one debrief session, Erin, and then you will be our next segment. So thank you for joining. And just back to Shakira. Shakira, do you want to talk about what your group discussed? And then we can loop back to some of those questions. We can also push pause for a bit and come back to questions as well after Erin presents.
Cool. Sounds great. Yeah. I'll say, yeah, our group echoed a lot of what folks have shared in terms of finding a way to talk with your coworker, not making assumptions about what he's actually going through and that it's mental health related, could be any sort of life challenge there as well. Um, some some of the things that came up, in addition to what many of the other groups have shared, I think include sitting with silence, offering to talk with him, but like many folks said, letting him know it's okay if he's not ready to talk or put things into words, to offer to give him space if he'd like a little space, but even offer to just sit with him if that's in quiet or in silence. And we talked about, yeah, sometimes it can be hard to sit with silence, but really important to just be alongside someone when they're maybe struggling. And then one discussion that we had that was really interesting, I thought, also had to do with real life. I think folks were acknowledging, because we're taking this course, we know that this is what we would aspire to, is to have these conversations and initiate these conversations. And in real life, it might feel really challenging to find a way to make a startup. And how do you have a soft approach or a gentle startup to a conversation? And in the workplace, especially, how do we take into account potential power dynamics or relationships? So we talked a lot about how your relationship, the length of your relationship, where you are in the hierarchy at work, the amount of trust you have, how that impacts how you might talk to someone. And in around the question of like, would you talk to other coworkers about what happened or what's going on in your concerns for your coworkers? Some folks definitely were like, no, not coworkers. That would be maybe seen as gossip or sensitive stuff to share, but potentially a supervisor who could help him connect with other resources at work like EAP or accommodations. And some folks thought if there was a coworker that you would talk to about what you've noticed, it maybe if there was a coworker closer to him. So you could check in with folks you know he's close to see, hey, have you checked in on him? Are they connecting and touching base in that way?
Great. Thank you so much, Shakira. All of you, just every time that we have these trainings, I find myself just learning every single time, no matter how many times we've talked about a topic. There's always so much that comes from you who are participating in your stories. So thank you so much. Um, we have invited a special guest today, Erin Von Kemp, who is a licensed social worker and who is an embedded social worker with the Mount Vernon Police Department. This is a very special program, and one that I hope catches with other counties around the US. Erin is someone who has a lot of experience with actually making her life's work is actually starting these discussions, gaining trust, and connecting people to the resources and care that they need. It caught my eye. I want to play this video that I saw of Erin, and then you'll understand why I thought it would be so great to have her with us here today and to share her wisdom with us. Remy, do you mind pushing that? Then we'll, yeah.
I'm Erin Von Femp, and I am the embedded social worker in the outreach coordination program at the City of Mount Vernon's Police Department, and we help people without homes develop resilience. This is really one of the newest trends in social work, is having embedded social workers within a first responder, either a police department or fire, which is exactly where somebody who can help should be. Our folks are, about 60% of them are from this area. Many of them have an untreated mental illness and or substance use problem, but not all of them. Some of them have had just terrible bad luck. A typical day is driving around looking for people, seeing if anybody ended up in jail or the hospital. Could be going in the woods with the park ranger to meet new people. I can walk up to anybody and start a conversation, And once I've figured out what the person needs help with, then I can connect them with services, I can drive them, I can be with them, I can advocate for them. And the police have a much different focus on reducing criminal activity and promoting the community safety. So we have seen people move from the streets to apartments and adult family homes and retirement homes and get sober, and it takes a group effort, and that's one of the most satisfying parts of this job, is to being able to facilitate those kinds of changes.
Thank you, Erin. We're going to shine a spotlight on you for a minute. And I think we just really wanted to hear from you and just from the perspective of those who are participating in this training. Sometimes we get questions about, I'm on a trail and I see somebody who might be, having some sort of psychosis, or maybe it's somebody who is struggling with addiction. Like, what can we do, or how can we judge whether we can do something? So we'd just love to hear a little bit more from you, who's done this type of work for so long, and hear what you have to say on this topic.
Thank you. I bring with me today a cold, so I apologize if I start coughing. And I can really benefit from questions to more better understand what you're interested in. I think that hearing just a little bit about what you guys were talking about, the whole idea of just approaching people and trying to make a connection is the way to build a relationship. And first of all, my program has expanded happily to, we have 4 social workers now who are out and about in the world and making contacts with people, which I'm completely grateful for. And so I'm mostly in the office now. But what we focus on a lot is just building relationship and not approaching people as one big pile of needs, because it's much harder to create an authentic relationship with somebody if you're only focused on the negative sides of them. So we take people, we have a kennel at the police department, so we'll walk dogs with our friends, or we have paint a mural with them, or take them to the fair. Anything we can do to just work on regular human things that everybody wants to have meaningful roles and belonging and feel like a whole person. So that's where we spend most of our time. And then we sort of listen with a third ear for any of the troubles that people might be in, to see if we can kind of offer some suggestions at some point. And it's usually, at least in our outreach, it's very rare that we'll roll up on somebody and say, what can I help you with? And then, gosh, these are the things you need. That certainly doesn't work. And most of the time people have tried a bunch of stuff anyway, and they lots of times feel like they don't have hope and that it won't get better. So we become the people in their lives who care about them for a while, and then help them transition to other places. I'm not sure if I'm even aiming. Am I aiming in the right area?
Absolutely, Erin. And I think that the point that you bring, that in our groups we all heard, is that we start with the person. We start seeing them as human. And like you said, I never heard it put quite that way, not as a bag of needs. And we are coming as the savior to fix their lives, because without developing that trust and relationship, they're not going to open up, because likely a lot of people have failed them before. A lot of people have left before. A lot of services have promised things that they couldn't. So I loved that, with, in so many words, it's the approach as treating them as a human, not as a bag of needs. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, when we come up to somebody, I'm particularly silly, and so I'll compliment. I love flair. So people who have wacky clothes, that's awesome. And I might just get some tips from them on how to get a little flair in my life, or you know, just talk about anything that is around. Sometimes the news, people still follow the news, or the weather, or pets. That's a big thing. So anything that I can, usually it's a comment on something that they say that I really like, or something that they're wearing. That's sort of it's superficial, but sort of the first stages of that. And then what we talk about in our jobs is that most of the time, so this is my metaphor that isn't worked out completely, but I think people's lives are like a river. And you can put a dam up, which would be like involuntary hospitalization or jail, something big and strong. But rivers, eventually, they break down those dams, and then it may do more damage. But if you ever seen a stream where a little stick comes into the river or the stream, and then the stream kind of starts to slowly curve to change its form, that's sort of what we try and do, is just be the little stick, and just maybe offer one time a suggestion. This is down the road, of course, but one time of doing something different. And if it doesn't catch on, then just moving back to whatever. I mean, just on a random thought, I want to have cornhole, you know, those games with the throw. I want to do that this summer, and just in a parking lot and hang out with people. We have, so that we can just have other stuff to talk about. But anyway, so starting off that way, and then seeing, nobody expected to be in that situation, and nobody ever really expects to have a marriage that breaks down, or any troubles that we all come across. And so to be able to listen to what their hopes and dreams and goals maybe were before, or the best times of their life, and then you can link suggestions to those things to help be on the same page as them with their goals. Because lots of times people will also say, like, you know, it's the whole motivational interviewing thing. And if people are in a different stage of change, then you just have to stick with helping them achieve their goals. And lots of people will not want to say that they have a giant mental illness either. And there's no reason to force them to accept a diagnosis. The whole point is to help them see that things in their life might need to change to achieve their goals. Maybe it's meds, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's eating better and having a better sleep cycle and getting away from people who aren't helping you, or anything like that. But we also try and not formally talk about these big diagnoses that sort of can get in the way.
Wonderful. I mean, such good advice, Erin. And I'm sure I want to just open it up for a few minutes for anybody else in the chat, or who would want to come unmute yourself to, if you have any questions or comments that you want to share while Erin's with us.
Please.
And don't be shy, because we learn from the questions that you all pose.
I see
Julie.
Jewel has her hand up. Yeah.
Do you have any statistics on actually how many people that you've helped into housing and through this from the time that you've done this? And what are average statistics for this situation?
Yeah, it's no, we first of all, in the little tiny Mount Vernon area, there are 8 outreach groups helping people. So it's a super collaborative effort. And the people that we've helped are, our team ends up working with people who have super complex situations. So there was one woman who had substance use and mental health and big justice involvement, and she had lots of physical health stuff. It took us a year to help her get into an adult family home. So we have small success numbers with people who had 4 to 10 service calls a day with police. So it's a little bit more on individual. We can talk about individuals who we have helped resolve more. And we're part of a group, CROA, which is the Co-Response Outreach Alliance, which is all the embedded mental health professionals in the state. We get together, and you can look at croa.com and see who all of those are. And we haven't started collecting data in that. We haven't figured out what data to collect yet. So I'm sorry about that. And I've seen questions in the chat and people raising their hands. So I will answer whatever I should.
And before you move from Jules' question, it's part of the reason maybe to consider carefully what information to gather, because some of these people don't want to be in the system. That's in part of why they're choosing or making some of the choices. So do you think that would get in the way of them disclosing or opening if we started getting more detailed information in the form of surveys, that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah. One of my very first, I got a training. I got trained with a different group of social workers who were embedded somewhere else, and they walked up to people and started, they had a piece of paper and they started asking them, like, how much are you using, and how do you use, and stuff like that. And one of the very first things I did by myself is I came up to this guy and started asking him his stuff, and he just yelled at me and ran away because that was dumb. So there's a lot of people that we only know their first names or don't even know. And we also struggle because we work in a police department that there are people who won't talk with us also. But
I think it was JJ, Natalie, and then Danielle. I see your hand too. JJ asks, how can we break the ice when we approach people? So like to your point, right? Like what would be a better way maybe to approach people rather than a bunch of questions?
Sure. I guess first you have to ask why you want to approach them. Is it do you want to help? Because sometimes they're not asking for help. But if they're around, or if there's something that you feel like you have to offer, that can work, or it can also be not accepted right away. But everybody that I know say that they're ignored by the community. So and I've also sat with people on the sidewalk and heard what people drive by and yell at them. So the biggest thing I think is to look them in the eye and be as authentic as possible, and not necessarily coming in to offer them something. It may evolve to that, but the biggest thing you can do is treat people like human beings. And then I just comment on something that I like about them, or something that they say that I really like. I try and give affirmations as soon as possible in the conversation.
Thanks. Natalie asked, do you have tips for de-escalation?
Only a little bit. If most of the time, if somebody's yelling, it's not about you. It's about their situation or whatever is happening with them. But if they're yelling near you or at you, to be able to first acknowledge that they're angry. That can take a lot of the power out of the situation, because there's nothing wrong with being angry. And lots of times we try and say, like, calm down, you don't have to be mad. But a lot of times I say, I would be mad too. If that happened to me, I would feel the same way. and try and align with them. And then the de-escalation says not really long sentences for sure. So if somebody's kind of not in their full brain, it's harder for them to pay attention to big long sentences. So agreeing with them, keeping your distance. So for sure, you really got to be around watching your area to make sure that you're not in hitting range for somebody. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And then I think Danielle's question, I'm seeing in the chat too. Danielle, did you want to ask that, or it was basically, what has been the reactions of people when they see police officer and your team approaching them?
We aren't with officers. I never have been. So, but I have a police radio. So some people won't talk, but most of the time, eventually they will. I also have cigarettes and snack bags and socks and all of the traditional things. And so if it's in a group and there's a person that I've known and they come up to me, then that gives they're the ambassador for the rest of the group a lot of times. And then if we can offer things for people, then obviously that's helpful. The cigarettes for sure. And then we're able to help people get IDs and birth certificates that other agencies can't necessarily, because we have access to police databases. So in Mount Vernon, it's small, and the word kind of gets out that we can help with that stuff. But most of the time, sometimes the police officers will call us to come to a scene, and so they'll see us together. But most of the time, we're just out and about on our own.
Thank you, Erin. Are there any other questions?
I think Luisa has one question in the chat.
I missed that. Sorry.
Oh, here we go. What do you think we can do to help people panhandling when they carry children with them?
Oh, that's a question. Questions about people panhandling come up a lot. I don't know how to answer that. It's obviously not illegal to be without a home and have children. And it's completely sad. Some people's philosophy is to give money, and others it's not, or to give food. And another thing that's a kind of a myth is that people who have addictions that all the money goes to using, but they also like to get a hotel room occasionally or get meals. So other than asking, I guess, if the family knows of the local resources, I wouldn't, and then seeing if the children look okay, but that's a real, what do you call it? Fine line between calling services on a child or not. So in Mount Vernon, normally the people who are panhandling with kids, the officers look at them or evaluate them. And since I've been there, there's never been a time they've called DCYF for somebody. I don't know if that's where you're going with that question.
Yeah, actually, I was asking because one time recently I saw a woman with 2 children, and they were in the sidewalk and they were asking for money with a sign. And I was like, how can I help besides giving them food without risking the children to go, I don't want to cause any more burdens or problems, but at the same time, how can you approach that? And was just something that yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly sad. I think that the people who all of your kind hearts are asking what you can do to make things better. And the bottom line sort of is to treat people like people, and then to advocate or share information that doesn't promote the stigma. But the problem is so big that none of us are going to do anything amazing on our own. And it's more about our state legislators, truthfully, and even federal ones that are going to have to make the changes because it's too big for any of us.
Thank you for mentioning that. There's been a couple of other questions pop up. Brandon asked if you feel that working with police department enables or hinders the work that you do.
Oh, sometimes. We have an unspoken rule that we're not going to tell the officers about anything that our friends are doing that is illegal. And so officers will send out pictures of somebody who's been seen stealing or things like that. And I am so dumb. I'm so bad at identifying anybody that I never can figure that out. So we created a kind of a informal firewall. Now, I will brag about my friends who are doing good things because it's a way to help reduce the stigma too. So I'll brag on the one side, but once we can demonstrate our value to people, then they're more able to be willing to work with us. But there is a population there that won't talk to us, and at least there are other agencies who will work with them, and then we can help through that agency if it's an ID or warrants or things like that.
Great. And Erin, I think we have time for a couple more, and we want to be sensitive to your time as well. This question about barriers to housing, I'm glad someone raised that, right? Because you mentioned it's a structural issue. This is a structural issue, so it's not going to be fixed overnight. But in some places, for example, well, let's just take Mount Vernon as an example. What are there places for people to go? What are some of the barriers there within Mount Vernon as it relates to? Yeah.
When I first came 7 years ago, there was no shelter, not one shelter bed there. And there was, pardon me? Oh, there's a place, but it's not low barrier. I should say there was no low barrier shelter. And it took, I don't know, I guess the shelter's now 3 years old, and we have they're tiny houses, and so there's some that are law enforcement drop off, so we can take somebody for a night there, and then the rest are for people staying there for 3 months. So we still and then in the winter we have a winter shelter, which is the traditional low barrier nightly shelter. We don't, it's terrible. And even in Whatcom County and Island and Snow counties, they don't have enough anyway. So it's a horrible situation that I can only say in our county, the leaders have finally acknowledged that it is some of their responsibility to help provide some shelters, but it's still an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a really important topic. Of course, we could talk all day about this particular issue, but I'm glad that you've brought this into the discussion, Erin, which I just want to mention that local voting, local involvement by all of us matters, especially when we're talking about issues like this. So if you've never thought about getting involved, it's really good to have your voice heard. Making even appointments with a legislator or a representative in your area or a leader is something that can be done. You have the power to do that. And the more that your voice is raised, the more that those individuals, if they want to stay in office, feel inclined to listen to you. And that is where funding is also, being allocated. So we all play a role in this structural response as much as our day-to-day involvement with individuals. So
Well
thank you
said.
all. Yeah, thank you for raising that. Okay, one more, this kind of goes together. One was, Clarissa wants to know if you are called to the scene by police officers or if there's a direct line that the community can call for you to come.
Yeah, we get referrals in every possible way. We drive up to people, officers call, community people call, some of our friends have their friends call, they walk into the police department, any possible way of contact is acceptable for us. And just quickly, I can give you my email if people want it. It's Erin V, ERINV like Victor, at mountvernonwa.gov. And Mount is spelled out, mountvernonwa.gov.
Is that correct, Erin? I just wrote it in the chat. Is that right?
I will scroll down to look. Oh, how come it's not showing up? Erin V at Mount. Yeah, that's it. I'm happy to chat with anybody at any point.
Okay. One more question before you leave, because what you're doing is just so needed and impressive. There's a question about whether there are other police departments that are starting to adopt this model.
Yeah, the CROA is we're all over the state, and Washington State's actually leading in this embedded mental health professional way, both in fire and police. There's 50 now? I don't remember. It's a bunch. Yeah, CROA, thank you. That's it. Yeah, it's all over. We need more, but it's happening slowly.
Erin, thank you so much. We have learned so much from you. We also want to just, again, give our thanks to you for all the work that you're doing and for your social workers on your team and what they're doing. And yeah, we just so appreciate you being here today. So everybody emoji, clap hands. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to give you back your time.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us even for when you're not feeling well.
Thank you. It was my honor. Have a good afternoon.
Please take good care of yourself so you can continue to take care of others.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
We could have had just an hour of that. Okay. Shakira.
Yeah, Shakira,
Yeah.
thank you for adding that information in the chat as well. And now we turn it back over to you to talk about having those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin did such a great job of covering so much about how to support someone, how to start conversations, really help round out the picture of what we all talked about during the scenarios. A couple other things that often come up, right, is what do we do if someone's having a mental health crisis? And how do we support them in getting help? So if you are worried that someone you love or you're experiencing a crisis or close to having one, it's really important to try to determine what the level of urgency or danger is. So trying to figure out, is the person at risk of harming themselves or others or destroying property? Are they talking about it, but talking about all the reasons why they're not going to do it? Are they talking about it in a way that makes you understand that they're going to do it imminently, immediately, without taking pause? Or have they already engaged in some harming behaviors towards themselves or others or property? You're going to want to consider whether or not you need emergency assistance. So whether or not it's time to call 911 or 988 or other crisis responders. And to think about whether or not you're at a place where you have the time to make a phone call to some mental health professionals to get some support and some guidance, right? It may be that a crisis is coming, but maybe not yet reached the peak, and you want to reach out to someone to get a little bit more suggestions about what to do and like when to know if there's a crisis. So like we said, a crisis includes that risk of harm to self or others or property. Could also be really severe self-neglect. Someone hasn't been eating for a really long time. That can get pretty dangerous for someone's health. So those are the types of things you might look for signs of a crisis. And then we talked a little bit about this earlier, is how do you get help without betraying a friend, without it seeming like it's gossip or like you've betrayed their trust? And I am a lover of words, I'll admit it. So I looked up, what is the definition of gossip? Like what makes something gossip versus not gossip? And one of the things that came up, or a couple of things came up. One is that it's casual conversation and how it's defined. And I would say if you're at the point of reaching out for help, ideally, we're not taking that as a casual thing, right? We're pretty worried. We know it's time to reach out for help, and we're taking that with a lot of care and intention and seriousness in mind. And yeah, I think that that's a big piece to think about, right? Is that even if someone is mad at us, I would rather have my friend be mad and alive and safe and as healthy as they can be than to have my friend not be mad, but also maybe not be here or not get the help that they needed. Um, so that's something to consider around sort of when it's at that point of really being important to get help. And I think some of the things are thinking about your options, right? You can talk to your friend and work with them to find out when they're ready to reach out for help. You all brought up earlier, right? The importance of letting someone reach out for help themselves and doing it when they're ready. So considering whether or not we are at a place where that is still an option, right? Where things are not yet at the level of crisis, where we may have to make a decision for someone that they're not able to make for themselves, but that we can make it together, that we can sit together, call emergency responders together, that we can go to the hospital together. And if they're not ready and there isn't yet sort of a life-threatening crisis at hand, you can always ask them, how will you know when you are ready? Like, it's okay that you're not ready now, but what would be the signs for you and for me as someone who cares about you to know that it is time to get emergency help? And that can start that conversation towards change, like Erin was talking about, knowing where someone is in their readiness for change or action. And like we said, another option to not betray is to call for information from a line like 988. And you could do that without disclosing your friend's information. You can say, I have a friend and I'm worried about them, but you don't have to disclose their personal information yet. And like we said, then there is the point at which we're really concerned and we may have to call emergency responders. And to avoid gossip, like folks said before, keep it factual. Identify who the person is, what behaviors of concern you're seeing, and how that might be different than what you're used to seeing with them. We'll go to the next slide now. And then one of the questions that came up earlier was how to de-escalate. And Erin started to touch on some real fundamentals of de-escalation or how to help reduce the intensity during a crisis. And step one, yeah, is keeping your tone of voice calm. It can be really hard when we're with others who are amped up, loud, or talking fast, to not also raise our volume or our speed. But one of the best things we can do is keep our voice and our body calm, and that actually helps other people keep their voice and their body calm as well. Listening and acknowledging how someone's feeling is really important. Not judging them. Yeah, not judging or fighting or arguing with them, trying to talk sense into them, but really validating and acknowledging the feelings of what they're saying. Like, hey, I can hear that you feel really angry or that you might be feeling really overwhelmed. And I get it. I hear you, right? Just saying and acknowledging that you hear where they're coming from without telling them to calm down or telling them they shouldn't feel that way, expressing genuine support and care. An interesting one is to avoid continuous eye contact. So really staring at someone and looking into their eyes without ever sort of deviating your gaze to look somewhere else could be really intense when someone's feeling vulnerable. So you want to just think about keeping your eyes a little bit soft, making sure you look away every now and then so that you're not just staring right at them in a way that could feel intense. Like Erin said, not asking too many questions or using too many words. So while it is good to offer options, right, you don't want to take control from someone. You want them to be able to have control and make decisions. You also don't want to talk too much or offer too much information. You want to keep your body language pretty calm. You don't want to move around a ton. So basically keeping things both in your body, in your tone, in information, and in your surroundings as calm as possible and as non-overwhelming as possible. And like Erin said, yeah, making sure that you are not trapping yourself or someone else in a situation, that there's plenty of space between your bodies to keep everybody safe. We'll go to the next slide. Here are some resources Jody put in the chat some of the details about 988 and 911, which are different resources to be used at different times. And here on this slide are some other resources for community and outpatient mental health services, low cost, low barrier options for support. And we'll talk more about 988 and more resources next week and in week 5, like Jody said. And then maybe we'll stop there for now and we'll pick up. We'll talk more about taking care of yourself, signs that maybe you're getting close to burnout in the coming weeks. So we'll pause there for now and go to any questions that might be left over in our last minute or so.
Me. There's a lot of resources on all the information that was sent in the lesson 3. Are we gonna be able to have that for a longer period of time, or once we finish with all the lessons that we can't access that information?
If I can jump in, you should be able to also get the slides every week when Noemi sends them out, but we do on our mental health matters wa.com site have a directory of resources, and we are going to get into some more of those resources and spotlights next week. We'll have the Forefront Suicide Prevention Center staff here to talk with us, go in depth a little bit more about how to help someone if they're actually talking about suicide or taking their life. There will be some resources shared there. And then on our final module, we're going to have you all dig into the resources and give some scenarios so we could talk a little bit more about the types of resources that are available. Does that answer your question?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Great. Everyone, thank you for so much, such a great discussion today, such great questions. Yeah, the website, those are there for as long as we have this website, Yasmin. So if we can maybe share the screen really quickly, everybody, and we can show you where those are. Noemi, if you want to stop sharing for a second, I can bring up our website and show everyone where those are at, and then you can even take a look at them and start using them now. Yeah, okay. Bear with me, everyone. I just have to find a screen that I don't have a million other screens open. So bear with me as I take you to our website. My computer already knows us really well. So this is our mental health matters wa.com website. And on the screen, you'll see resources. What we've tried to do is really pull all of the resources that we have found from our community partners into our directory. And if you click on the directory of resources, what will pop up is you can even download this if you would like. But they're links. We also are taking pains to make sure that these stay active, but there's so many that there could be some that we need to know. If you're clicking on something and it's not working, we need to know so we can make that change. But that is a directory. We want to encourage you all to take a look at that. That will actually help in preparation for our last module, module 5, where we're going to be talking about this and do a scavenger hunt, if you will, based on some scenarios. Anna.
Yes, and I just wanted to mention that the online course itself, everyone will have access for 6 months afterwards. So you can continue accessing that content after the program is over for that period of time.
Well, everyone, thanks again for being here today. We just really appreciate your participation. We look forward to seeing you next week. So we'll see you again this time next week.